So everybody, I threw in a little bit of extra at the end of that second period with a little bit of guided meditation. Um, how'd that go? Any thoughts? I just want to start there. If a few people want to comment, you can just unmute yourself and jump in if you have anything to say. This holding tight and then letting go. Any thoughts?
I found it helpful in terms of like really truly accepting what it was that I was dealing with and holding on tight to, really fully realizing and accepting it.
Great, Tennessee. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I definitely was present to not wanting. So the thing that kept coming up is I was felt tired. And so when you said to like fully embrace it, I got how much I didn't want to. And I was like, no, I don't want to feel more tired. And so I know that that's something that I do a lot with like negative, when there's a negative feeling, it's like, no, I try to like push it away. So it was like, yeah, it was hard to like, I didn't want to embrace tired. So yeah, it
And
was a challenge.
and what happened when you let go?
You know, and I actually felt a lot better. Like when I did actually embrace it and then let go, I did feel less tired for sure. I was like, oh, I'm not that tired anymore. Like breathing felt like it was giving me energy.
Yeah.
Um, but it still wasn't a pleasant process.
Yeah. How about one more, and then I'll tie
My
it.
favorite part was the exhalation and the release. I really felt the release part of it. My ankle was hurting, so I directed everything to that pain. And so when you said grasp on tighter, I actually was visualizing that. And then when we exhaled, I really felt a lightening of, just presence and just the feeling of acceptance.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I want to start. Well, we already started. I want to continue by tying this to a koan, and a very specific koan. And I also want to acknowledge the wonderful and sometimes strange way that Zen works. I think most of you probably saw this week's newsletter. I do not consider myself to be a poet. I mean, I was a teenage poet writing poems as a teenager, and I've done many different forms of writing. And you'll notice this week's newsletter started with what might be called a poem, and that occurred because I wanted to take what was present in this moment, and largely, fueled by the situation we're all in with the stay-at-home orders, the lockdown, the pandemic, whatever words you put to that, and strip away as much as I could, strip away as many words and thoughts as I could, and kind of try to get to the essence of things. And so I suppose that could either end up looking like a poem or just a strange collection of words. And whether that was successful or not is not of too much concern. But I wanted to let you know where that came from. And then Lori and I were working in one of her gardens for one of her clients, out there by ourselves, completely socially isolated. And I said, I'm thinking about tomorrow's talk, and is there a koan that you would like to hear about, Lori? Like that makes sense to talk about at this point in time. And almost without hesitation, she said, "Man up a tree." And I was like, okay, cool. Man up a tree is one of my favorite koans. It's a lot of fun to work with. And I'll read it here in a second. Well, no, let me read it right now. Because this is just, I mean, I just love this about our practice, right? Kyogen's man up a tree. The case. Master Kyogen said, it's like a man up a tree, hanging from a branch by his mouth. His hands cannot grasp a branch. His feet won't reach a bough. Suppose there is another man under the tree who asks him, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? If he does not respond, he goes against the wish of the questioner. If he answers, he will lose his life. At such a time, how should he respond? Holding on to the, hanging from a branch by his mouth. Can't grasp a branch. Feet won't touch another bough. Somebody asks a question of vital importance to them. Do you hang on or do you let go? Right? And as I started looking at this koan again, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't know if it's just happenstance or circumstance. Lori and I talked about this, but right in that little ditty that I wrote at the beginning of the newsletter, it says, holding on, letting go, right? Holding on is one experience. Letting go is another experience. Anybody feeling like that right now? Just in general, like, ah! And then moments of maybe some peace or letting go or just wanting to escape, right? Holding on or letting go. Do I hold on? Do I let go? The commentary on this is interesting, and I think this might be useful to some of us who are doing koan study. Even if your eloquence flows like a river, it is of no use. Even if you can expound the whole body of the sutras, it is to no avail. If you can respond to it fittingly, you will give life to those who have been dead and put to death those who have been alive. If, however, you are unable to do this, wait for Maitreya to come and ask him. Okay, so I'll unpack that a little bit. Many of you over time have said, what book should I read, right? And you probably get tired of me saying, don't worry about the books. The experience is it. There are good books. There's lots of good reading. But it's not the sutras. It's not the intellectual endeavor of knowing these things, of learning these things, of being able to recite these things. That is not the essential matter, right? As they say in Zen. What is essential is how we experience our life and how we express our life, right? And it's manifested, frankly, by Jason showing up because Dylan is here, and by John showing up because Tennessee is here, right? I doubt, I'm not sure, because Tennessee's a pretty learned person, but I doubt that John is here because they spent 4 hours reading an obscure text from the 13th century, right? I suspect, John, it has more to do with Tennessee and her invitation, and the same for Jason and Dylan, right? And so this is why I'm always like, yeah, the books are good, but sit Zazen, right? You gotta have that base, you gotta have that experience, you've gotta know what it is to have thoughts arise, to practice letting them go, to hang on tight, and then to loosen the grip. That's the experience. And then, for those of us that are communicators and have the gift of gab and the gift of writing, right, Philip, it can be a trap, right? Because we can talk our way around in circles, things, and we can convince people. I mean, for heaven's sake, I had a career in advertising, practiced over and over in the art of influencing and persuasion. right? And yet we hit this Zen practice, and that's not it. No amount of eloquence, no amount of knowledge of the sutras gets to the heart of the matter. If you can respond to it fittingly, you will give life to those who have died. That's like, if you can respond without a sales pitch, without the words, without the power of persuasion, if your response is your being, other people see that and feel that and are energized by that. You can bring a smile to other people's faces, and wouldn't that be nice right now? And put to death those who have been alive, the commentary says. Now, this is not actually killing people per se. This is more about killing off the delusions and beliefs and opinions about the way things are, right? And we are in that period right now. We are in that period right now where we have been stopped in place, right? Now, assuming we're not getting massive orders delivered from Bevmo, right? This is kind of a forced Zazen for everybody, right? We're frozen in place and have to, by the very nature of the situation we're in, look at things without all the motion, without all the scurrying, without all the shopping, right? This is what Zen is designed to do, what these koans are designed to do, is it's a technology for cutting through what we think is so and getting to what is actually so. That's what in this commentary, when it says, put to death those who have been alive, it's doing violence to cutting through that delusion, right? So the case itself, do you hang on for dear life by the teeth? The skin of your teeth, right? That's an expression, the skin of my teeth, right? Ah, right? Or do I let go? So, it wasn't accidental that we did that little exercise in Zazen this morning. There's another thing I want to say about this koan, and it relates to our practice and our working together. So I think that this is an important thing to cover. And you can look at this koan from different ways, but there is an element of teacher-student in this koan as well. Kyogen was a very educated, very eloquent, very erudite monk, and the story is told that because of that, because of all of that skill, it took him a long time to have that enlightenment experience, that kensho, right? And it took him so long, in fact, that when his teacher Isan asked him, said, show me your original face before your mother and father were born, which is another koan, he came up against I don't know, and he went and consulted all the texts and all of the sutras and all of his notes from all of the Dharma talks. He went to YouTube and watched all of the Dharma talks of all of the teachers he could find back there in the 1200s, and found that it was not sufficient. And he burned it all. He burned all the books and all his sutras and all his notes. And he went away into the mountains, as the story is told, and became a hermit for years. Basically said, I don't get it. I don't get it. And this is another really beautiful Zen tale, but then one day he was sweeping a walk, right? Sweeping a walk in his hermitage, and a stone and hit a piece of bamboo. Pop, you know? And at that moment, it all came rushing forward to him. And he wrote a poem, the first line of which is, "One striking sound, and I have forgotten all I knew." Now, if you rewind a little bit to that moment when he was working with his teacher on the koan of original face, his request to Isan was, "Please tell me. I can't find the answer. I do not know. Please tell me." And Isan said, "I could easily tell you, but you would reproach me later." And so then we go forward to the moment of the pebble striking that bamboo and Kyogen's moment of great enlightenment. And at that moment, he wrote this poem and he bowed down in the direction toward which Isan, was, and in profound gratitude for not having been given the answer. Because it's very different to read, it's very different to conceptualize, it's very different to intellectualize the profound oneness of everything. It's one thing to read about it, it's one thing to hear me talk about it, right? And another when you actually experience it yourself. And these koans are designed so that we get to experience it ourselves. I promise you, you can go look up the answers to the darn things and come into interview and it still won't work because you have to experience it. Now, is this experience only accessible to us through koan study? No, it's accessible to us every moment of lockdown, every moment of safer at home, every moment of life when it returns to whatever form of what it used to be that it's going to be. It's always there, but it's for each of us to recognize that stone striking the bamboo. I'll read a little bit from Yamada Roshi's commentary here, a paragraph. This is every koan. Jason and John, if you're not familiar with koans, you just heard one, right? It was like man up a tree. Do you hang on for dear life or do you let go? What's the sound of one hand clapping? How do you stop the sound of the temple bell, right? That's the koan. Every koan presents us with a problem which cannot be solved by thought or reasoning. The common sense of ordinary people will reject it as absurd. I just had that conversation with a friend of mine who looked at me like I was crazy. Learned people, such as philosophers and scientists, will feel repugnance at the lack of reason in the koan. Such people are often perplexed when confronted by the strange and even abnormal expressions found in the language of the koan. Koans bring us into a land abounding in contradictions of ideas and concepts. We cannot escape by means of rational thinking. There is no other way of freeing ourselves from this confusion than by cutting through it as though it were the Gordian knot. I had to go look that up, by the way. Wonderful story about the Gordian knot. So I'll leave that to you to go look up. This cannot be done by rational thinking or logical reasoning. It can only be accomplished factually. Okay, those of you working on koans, there's a lot of hints in this next 3 sentences. What is a fact in Zen? It is the manifestation of essential nature by an action such as standing up, sitting down, eating, drinking, crying, or laughing. In the case of Joshu's mu is the fact. In the case of Gutai's finger, raising a finger is the fact. In this case, the fact is some action of the man up the tree. And of course, I'm duty bound not to give anybody the answer here, right? But I thought that was a beautiful little description from Yamada Roshi about the nature of koans themselves. Right? So do we hang on or do we let go? Now, I think we all perhaps just a few minutes ago experienced the power of hanging on, holding tight, holding fast, it's sometimes called in Zen. There is immense power in holding fast. We live in a relative world. We have to hold fast to the steering wheel, or chaos would take over. And we have to let go. Isn't that like holding a young baby and looking into its eyes, or being in love? Like truly being in love, not coveting the other person's attention or wanting them to tell you you're great, but fully falling into that embrace of being lost in the other person, being completely lost in it, letting go, or the absolute in Zen, as we talk about. And we're in that moment right now in our homes and our apartments where we have the opportunity to practice both. Hold on really tight to that opinion. Hold on to it, grab it, put it in a vice and crank it down and see what happens. And then just let it go and prepare the next meal. I'm going to stop my attempt at eloquence there and hope that there was some experience created in all of this for each of you, because that is my only job, and our only job as a Sangha is to create and hold the space so that each of us have the chance to have that experience. So I will stop there and open it for any comments or questions that any of you may have. And I'll rely on you to unmute yourselves.
I definitely have a comment. Something really stood out to me that I thought was amazing, which was it was like you said something about the escape of rational thought, like that rational thought is an escape, which I've never thought about that as being the case, but it's completely true. I mean, I over intellectualize everything, which is totally putting all of that in front of the truth, you know, just like grasping, you know. So anyway, I've never thought about rational thinking as an escape before.
There's a lot of books behind you, Tennessee.
Yeah. Maybe I'm going to rethink that.
Books are great, guys. You know, I mean, and knowledge is great. It's how do you hold it, and where is the true experience in all of it? Anyone else?
Sometimes I think, I actually just wanted to respond to that you were saying, Tim, because it seemed to me like, you know, being right is so important in our world, and, you know, the comparison one to the other, and the competition in all things. You know, you can't drive down the road without competing, or feel at some point feeling like you're competing with somebody on the road, you know, or you feel like you can feel them competing with you in some way, or they're going to show you or something. And I sometimes feel like the rational thought enables us to make ourselves right and put ourselves above others. And I don't know, I just thought about that when you were talking about that.
Here's a thought. I thought that letting go is kind of a holding fast, and holding fast is kind of a letting go.
Very Zen of you. You want to say something more about that?
Well, just to be specific, I was talking about my ankle, and thinking only about my ankle was kind of a letting go of everything else.
Yeah.
And letting go of the ankle was kind of holding fast to the whole world.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's some of it in the other, and so it's not necessarily dualistic. And I think, I don't know, sometimes the cones set you up on this precipice and it's A or B, but sometimes B is an A and A is an B, and it's not always, the setup is not always the answer.
Perfectly said, Dylan, and you've perfectly expressed the device of this koan, right?
I only just thought of this.
Yeah. Do you hold fast or do you let go? And our rational mind, our scientific, intellectual, eloquent mind, whatever, says, oh, I have to make a choice here. Perhaps there's another choice. Perhaps there's another choice. By the way, remember that if in the upper right-hand corner, if you put it on gallery view at this point, you can see everybody if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on my iPhone. It's a little mess. A little.
If you're on the iPhone, swipe to the right or the left and you'll get into it.
Oh yeah, cool.
I've used Zoom way too much.
Yeah. I'm a novice at Zoom. So.
Philip, anything in there for you?
Oh, that was so fun. I want to thank Dylan and Tennessee for their comments on the koan, because I feel like it deepened my experience of it. And I also really like the koan for a number of reasons. I feel like I can see certain patterns in myself where I will hold off being okay with an experience until I've made a decision, until I've decided, oh, I'm gonna keep biting on this branch with my teeth, or I'm gonna let go. And I think definitely the last like year or more of my practice has been a also like not pushing away that in between space where you don't know if it's where you haven't decided to either let go or hold on, and being okay with these in between spaces where maybe we don't know what is the right decision to make, and that's been something that I've been moving more towards in my practice. And so I feel like I resonated with that in the koan. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, the talk really made me aware of how often I'm hanging tight to an idea, even really small ones. Like, for example, today, like this afternoon, I'm doing a session with my sister's kids, and I'm going to teach them an art project, but I don't know what the project is going to be yet. And so I was like, as we were going into Zazen, I was like, oh God, it's going to be hard to come up with something. And then when you're giving your talk, I'm like, why does it have to be hard? Like, maybe it's not. Why am I hanging on to this idea that it's going to be hard? Maybe it's just going to be super easy. So these kind of like ideas that we have about things that kind of like sneak up on you. You don't even realize you're hanging on, even just simple ones like that. And so I got present to how when you let go, when you release your grip on the branch, what's possible, right? It's like that hanging on reduces what's possible. But if you let go, it's like things can be any way, infinite.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks, Melissa.
I really relate to like, why does it have to be so hard? I hold on to that one a lot. But when I let go, it's like, oh, I can breathe.
Uh, thanks for having me, and thanks for the talk. And it was great. And for me, it spoke to I think my natural desire to feel in control. Um, and so for me, that expresses itself often as dualistic thinking. You know, I either want to be in control of letting go, and that's my reward, or I want to hold on to something, often because I'm identifying with it. You know, let's say it's a job, you know, this job is me, and therefore I can't let go of it, because then if I do, there's no me or a relationship or money or, you know, whatever. Um, but then if I focus on always letting go, and that's the cookie, I always have to strive for that, and I try to suppress any form of holding on, then that backfires as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, this exercise teaches me that holding on and letting go is sort of, you know, I gotta get used to it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I just want to say first, sorry I was late. I got stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
But great, really great talk. I really, it really just resonates with right now. You know what's going on. I really love how you set it up, and just kind of looking at how stuck we are, and how stuck I am in my own shell, and wanting to break free and go out and be amongst people, and just really getting present to that sense of that we're always like, I'm always holding on to something with my teeth that I don't want to let go of. And if I don't, especially in this context, if I let go, then I die, but I'm doing the right thing. It just really like illuminates I think the fundamental frustration of being human in a really great way. So thank you so much for your talk. It was really great. And also, I like your poem. I want you to write more poems, please.
Thank you. This notion of I'm going to die is actually a really wonderful one, because, or scary. I don't know, scary and wonderful. Because Zen, when we really dive into it, can feel like that, right? And this is the other reason that we say sit. You know, sit consistently. You know, that's why we have 4 opportunities a week now to sit together, right? Because as you start holding fast and letting go, right, it can be unsettling, right? As Jason was saying, well, but if I let go, who am I? And what will happen, right? I remember when I started this practice, I was still on the upward curve of the hockey stick in my ad career. And it was like, well, wait a minute, is this going to destroy my professional advancement? Right? You know, how can I be an effective ad guy when I'm like moving off in the forest by myself, you know?
Letting go.
And letting go, right? You know? And it can feel like it can feel like dying sometimes. And it's hard work. It can be hard work, right? Tennessee mentioned earlier today is like getting up at 5:30 a.m., you know. Although Tennessee, I've seen you do that successfully many times. But yeah, there's hurdles, but they're there for a reason, and it's all for support. Because as we start letting go, you need a soft landing sometimes, right? You need somebody under the tree that's going to catch you if you let go, right? So, you know, I know sometimes it's like Zazen, more Zazen. The Maizumi Roshi used to say, Zazen. You know, you go in and do an interview with Maizumi. I did not do it personally because he had died, but my teachers tell me, you go in and present a koan, and often the response would be, more Zazen. Ring the bell and you're out of there. 15 seconds. You know? Anybody else?
Hi, this is John. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of. And you know, I have a relationship with my reasonable mind, my rational mind, and it's you know, at times it's almost an addiction. You know, I look for the answers, and what's been shared to me is oftentimes there's no answer, and you know, and I think, Jason, you shared, oftentimes I get attached to letting go. Like, I need to let go of this, and it almost becomes the problem. And, you know, this is a great place for my reasonable mind to come kind of look at itself and realize there's often no answers. And I think you shared, it's maybe the experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe the experiences of who I can be. And, you know, I can have, you know, it's what I often do is become, you know, that way of being for me, the reasonable mind is often wrong. And I maybe I can invite some fun with it. So, you know, less significance is often freeing for me. And sometimes I just forget that. And, anyway, I'm so glad to be here. I love this kind of stuff. And so thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. John, if I can ask, what is your background professionally? Like, how are you trained?
So I'm trained in technology. I lead large software development teams for a consulting company that's global. And oftentimes I find myself lost in the dualism and the striving. You know, our mantra is, you know, high performance delivered. And so sometimes I get lost in that with this part. So this is a time for me to explore other parts of who I am.
Excellent.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know this because you haven't been here before, but I was educated first as an engineer, electrical engineer, computer science, and did coding and went down to debugging, you know, faulty code hole many times. And also as a writer, I always wanted to be a writer, and then found my way into advertising, the art of persuasion and understanding people from that point of view. So I had a lot of strikes against me coming into this practice in terms of, I had to figure it out on every angle, right? And there's a wonderful amount of freedom when that gets removed from you. But I also want to point out that learning not to always use those tricks and tools and seeing through things in a not an either or fashion actually can create great power and success and advancement in the relative world as well, because you are operating from a place of openness, as I think Melissa said, right? Once you remove a lot of the garbage, there's a lot of room for true inspiration and art and creativity and intuition to come through. Those are our birthright, and we cover them up and muffle them with all this other stuff. And so this is not about us all becoming monks sitting up on a mountain and never coming down into the real world, but about clearing the way so that we can fully express, you know, who we are and have huge success and power in the real or relative world as we know it. You know, the one we see, touch, taste, hear, smell. I think a fair number of us have had that experience, like this practice of tearing everything down and stepping into the vast unknown and what's called emptiness actually gives you tremendous ability to make the right choices, to choose where to strike with the sword, just like the samurai who trained in Zen. So probably enough editorializing. Anybody else? No? I'm so tempted to call on you, Shalay. That's okay. Marsh is sitting there very happy. I don't think you got anything for us, Marsh? You good? Okay. Then I think that does it. Oh, no, Shalay is, I just unmuted you.
Okay, I was trying to unmute myself a couple times. No, I mean, I guess if I'm to say something, it's just to the point you made, because that really resonates with me. I find that when I am, I guess, courageous enough to be vulnerable, to go into the void, so to speak, that's where the real magic happens. And some great discovery comes about that was unexpected, that I never could have imagined happening. So that's what I was just kind of pondering when you were saying those things, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it looks like we may have lost on, oh no, Andre's still there. Good. We actually have enough people to fill more than one screen, which is nice. Andrea, how are you doing?
Am I mute? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I enjoyed today. There's a couple things that I remember. I remember when I first got sober, they said, "Oh, there's only one thing you have to change," and I was like, "Well, what's that?" And they said everything. So I was like, "Oh my God, I got to change everything." And then I also remember, like, with shamanic practice, we always go to the fire and we're constantly, releasing and shedding and giving our, our heavy, dense energy and things to the fire and rediscovering. And I think in this last couple weeks with work, it's like what really has created the stress and the tension is that every day, things are changing and it's a whole new way of doing things. So I noticed within myself of holding on to the way that we used to do things, and that would cause tension because we're not doing it that way because of what's going on. And once I was able to grasp onto that and just know, okay, today before you start work, there's going to be some policies and protocols and things are going to change and it's going to be different than it was yesterday. And that helped me. And in the meditation today, I really appreciated that because there's some roles and beliefs that I was been holding on these last few days, and I really just hung on to them, and it created this momentum of emotion. And then when you said to release, it was like, you know what, it's once again, you're letting go and redefining. And I think that happens for me on a daily basis. So I certainly appreciated what everybody said and the meditation. And I don't know about the koans. I'm a thinker. I'm always in my head. So sometimes when we talk about them, I'm like, oh, look, that's a shiny object over there. So I know that will be something that I can develop in time. And I just keep it real simple. I'm sitting and there's some good stuff from it. And I'm really grateful everybody's here today. It's nice to see your faces. I finally figured out how to use the video camera. So
Great. And you'll stick with us another few minutes because I'm going to have you do an announcement after we do the closing. Okay?
Okay.
All right. One final comment, if anybody else burning desire to say anything? Don't want to cut anybody off. Okay. I just want to point out that also in the title of the communication that went out this week, I mean, call me a headline writer, but it, what was it? The world will never be the same, right?
Yeah.
And then I did a full stop or period and again, right? Because you hear that expression, oh my God, the world will never be the same, or everything, but the fact of the matter is that's always true. There's just a belief that we walk around with that the world is going to be the same. We have no clue. We have no evidence for that. In fact, all the evidence points to it's not going to be the same. I'm not the same age. I don't look the same way. Like the same thing's not happening outside the window right now. I mean, it's never going to be exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't we recreate our days so that they are the same?
We do.
I'm not saying that that's great. I'm saying
do.
That's a comfort zone that we create for ourselves that isn't necessary. We can let go.
One of the biggest gifts of this practice for me was the ability to experience life like a child.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work. I mean, I'm just as screwed up as anybody else, right? But when you can hang with it, like when you can wake up in the morning and you just wake up and there's this big unknown vast day in front of you and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. It's a playground, right? It's a playground. The world will never be the same again. Yeah, duh, right? And it can be a lot of fun. And the other reason I like this Kyogen's Man Up a Tree is it's just fun, right?
Yeah.
You just play with this stuff like, like what is that? I mean, it's a ridiculous little story. It's wonderful. And it's what we do all the time. So anyway,
right.
Let's close out. Let's do the 4 vows, couple of announcements, and get everybody on your way so you can go out shopping and to the movies and stuff. I'm going to put the vows up here.